Welcome to the Balanced Budget Blueprint. This is everything that you need to know from A to Z to be able to take control of your money so that you can build wealth and create a life that you love. I'm Kyle Sy, financial coach and owner of Sy Coaching, and this is exactly what I use to pay off 5 figures of debt while I made less than $35,000 a year as a single father. Now, full transparency, I do offer one-on-one paid coaching to help people to reach their financial goals. And my hope is that you get enough value out of this free budgeting course so that you might consider signing up for a paid coaching session in the future where I can help you to achieve your goals. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into budgeting. Real quick, here's an outline of what I'll cover today. First, the budgeting mindset. This will lay some of the groundwork for budgeting so that you can approach it with hope and confidence rather than stress and anxiety. The next section will be common barriers that will keep people from budgeting, along with a quick look at my first budget. That's where you're going to see that nobody's perfect and you don't actually have to nail it the first time. That's going to be followed by creating a budget where you're going to walk with me as I make a budget for the average family of 4, covering the whole process and the tools that I recommend to use for it, as well as how to modify this process if you have an irregular income. And lastly, we're going to focus on tracking transactions, cutting costs, and adjusting your budget for subsequent months. From there, you're going to be off to the races, well on your way to achieving your financial goals. So let's get started. Now, before getting into the numbers, it's also important to understand the proper mindset around budgeting. First and foremost, you will never be able to get ahead in your finances if you spend more money than you make. It's just simply mathematically impossible. If you're used to spending like you're in Congress, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to make the decision to change. Because if you want to achieve a different result, you're going to have to do something differently. There's just no way around it. So it's time to decide that you are in control of your financial future, and it's time to be intentional about creating and keeping a budget so that you can win with money. Secondly, if you're married, include your spouse for God's sake. Do not come at them with a new plan from out of nowhere to magically fix your finances. That's a surefire way to end up on the couch tonight. You need to walk hand in hand together and be on the same team tackling this money problem. Money issues are reportedly one of the top reasons for divorce in the US. So please save yourself the headache and the argument and get an agreement to work on your finances together. Next, it's important to understand that a budget is nothing more than a predetermined plan for your money. It's just a guide for all the money that comes in and all the money that goes out. And if you're budgeting effectively, the money coming in is going to be on the greater side of that scale. A budget is meant to give you hope and peace. It's not meant to restrain you. It's not meant to boss you around. It's you telling your money where to go rather than sitting around and wondering where it went. And finally, your first budget will not be perfect, and it's not supposed to be. The idea of creating your first budget is to get something on paper so that you at least have a starting point that you can change and adjust accordingly. When I made my first budget, I had planned for $300 a month for food as a family of 3. Now, if you have kids, you know just how delusional that is. And if you don't have kids, well, let's just put it into perspective. The average grocery spend for a family of 3 is somewhere in the ballpark of $750 a month. So you could say I was a bit off that month. Now, I mentioned that story to say this. A messy budget is better than none at all. So no matter how bad it might look, get it on paper so that you can start identifying money leaks and you can begin fine-tuning that budget. So now that we have the proper mindset around budgeting, let's talk about creating your first budget. I know thinking about that can give some people pause. So I want to cover a few of the barriers that some people often face when budgeting for the first time. First, some people may feel like they'd rather not look at their finances at all. Maybe they have anxiety about money, or maybe they have a mountain of debt that they can't comprehend possibly being able to pay off. Well, no matter what the situation is, if you don't want to look at your finances, then the solution for you is going to be clarity. You want to get clear on the entirety of the situation. If you bring everything forward out into the light, then yes, it's probably going to be uncomfortable and likely even scary for some of you to see the full financial picture. But you will then at least be able to take ownership of the situation and begin to make the necessary changes in order to be able to move forward. But you cannot move forward until you have first identified and addressed the problem. So it's important to go ahead and bite the bullet and get that first budget on paper. The second common reason that people don't want to start budgeting is that they think the budget might be too restrictive They want to live life. They want to have more fun with it. And they feel like the budget is something that holds them back. But looking at it in reality, for me, a budget actually represents more freedom than anything. My budget gives me the ability to splurge on myself or others without having to feel guilty or wondering if I made a bad financial decision. It gives me the space to leave an outrageous tip when I'm going out to dinner. It ensures that I'm putting money toward my financial future, putting them toward my priorities rather than the luxuries. My budget is the thing that lets me enjoy my life without jeopardizing my financial future. To me, that doesn't feel very restrictive. That feels like peace. And the last common reason that people give for budgeting is because their spouse isn't on the same page. Well, the simple answer is this. I know, easier said than done, but you could let the budget itself be that same page to bring you guys together. So let me explain. Often when two people aren't seeing eye to eye on their finances, one is more of a free spirit type of personality, one is more of the nerd around money. So the free spirit is probably the one who's more likely to have the fun attitude around money. They're less analytical, as to where the nerd is the more analytical one. They're more into the spreadsheets, tracking every penny that goes in or out of the account. So a good practice to stay on the same page for these two is to schedule monthly budget meetings with your spouse. I know, it sounds so boring, but it's an easy way to stay aligned with one another. And during this meeting, the nerd can create the budget and present it to the spouse, or present it to their spouse, the free spirit, and then say nothing. Give the free spirit the opportunity to change something on that budget. So anything reasonable, they can pull from one category, reallocate it to another. Now, the thing is, for the free spirit, there are some ground rules. First and foremost, you actually have to show up to the budget meeting. We can't be on the same page and working together if we're not even present together. So first, you got to show up to the meeting. I know, it's so boring sitting down talking about money when you could just spend it and forget about it. But show up to the meeting, and when you're there, you have to make a change to maybe incorporate some fun or some of your own opinions into this budget. As the free spirit, you're not allowed to just say, oh, whatever you think's best, honey, or it looks good just how it is. This way, both you and your spouse are in agreement with how the money is going to be spent, how it should be spent. And now you both have skin in the game. So instead of my budget or his budget or her budget, it now becomes our budget. And together, we will reach our financial goals. And if you're single, obviously that doesn't apply to you yet. However, it would still be a good idea to have someone on your team. Find someone that can be an accountability partner, somebody that you trust, who's honestly going to check you when you go against your budget. You want this person to know your goals. You want them to be close enough to you so that they can challenge you to tighten up the budget when necessary. Now, if there's something standing between you and creating your first budget that I didn't mention, you're more than welcome to ask me at a free consultation. You can schedule it at kylesci.com/consultation. And I will gladly help guide you around whatever that obstacle may be. Now, for the primary reason that you clicked on this video, how to create a budget. First and foremost, there are many different ways to budget. Today, we're going to be walking through the one method that worked for me, a zero-based budget. What does that mean? Well, it means that your income minus your total expenses, savings, and giving equals zero. And we're getting together every month, creating each budget before the month starts and giving every single dollar a job, so it's easy to stay on course when your paycheck hits the account. Next, tools. You can use any number of budgeting tools out there. Personally, I use the Every Dollar app by Ramsey Solutions. If you prefer paper and need a place to start, I do have a printable budget sheet, which will be available below this video if you're watching on my site, and it'll be linked in the description for YouTube and all the other platforms out there. Now, whether you think the budgeting sheet is best or one of the many budgeting apps available out there on the App Store, you might have to add, edit, or delete any budget categories that you do or don't already see listed on there. So now that we've got that taken care of, we're ready to start budgeting. So the first thing that we're going to fill in is your expected income for the coming month. If you make irregular income, go ahead and use the amount you made in your slowest recent month out of the last 6 to 8. So put in that smallest number so that we can have a plan for our worst case scenario. Now, you can always add income later in the month if you end up earning more than that. So for my example, I'm going to be using the national averages and medians where available. So as a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children, we're going to put the income around $67,1750 a month. Now, once your income is listed, keeping in mind, this income is going to be your after-tax income. So whatever actually hits the bank account, this is what we're going to budget with. Now, once that income is listed, we're going to go ahead and factor in 10% for giving. Personally, I'm a Christian, so for me, this is just a tithe to the church. But no matter what your religious affiliation or lack thereof might be, I personally recommend that you get in the habit of giving 10% somewhere, whether it's a charity or just some cause that you believe in. Because if you don't give a little now, it'll be much harder to give a lot later. And what I've found is that the most fulfilling things that I've been able to do with money have been more when giving rather than spending or saving. So the next line item in our budget is going to be saving. We're going to go ahead and put in 10% into this category for now. This one is going to fluctuate depending on where you are in your financial journey. But for now, it's important to put it first. So for many people, this is going to go directly toward their next financial goal. For the sake of this example, the current goal we'll say is Ramsey baby step number 1 of our starter emergency fund of $1,000. Your next step is going to be called your 4 walls. That's food, shelter, utilities, and transportation. Food is going to vary depending on your household size. So for the sake of the example, using national averages, we're saying our 4 people is going to be $1,200 a month for food. For shelter, we're using the US median rent price at $13.98 a month. And for our utilities, also following averages, we have water at $39, sewer $71, gas $80, and electric at $135. Now for transportation, we're putting $260 for gas, assuming that there are 2 vehicles, with the average being about $130 per vehicle per month. That's what we're spending on gas. Now, we're going to do about $150 for maintenance, because the national average is somewhere around $60 to $70. This is going to cover things like oil changes, brakes, tires, and other expected wear and tear on regular vehicles. Now, that $150 is going to go into a sinking fund. What a sinking fund is essentially a chunk of money that's getting set aside for specific, less frequent expenses. So every month I'm putting that $150 aside into a separate account. I personally like to use a separate account. You just put it in savings, but that way you know exactly what it's earmarked for. And I only use that account for the vehicle maintenance. Now that our full walls are taken care of, I'm going to put our minimum monthly debt payments so that we can avoid any ridiculous fees or falling into collections or anything ridiculous like that. Now, the median used car payment is about $525, and we have 2 of those in this example. Because let's just assume that everything is financed just like the average American does. Let's also assume that one of these people have a student loan. That average is about $336 a month of a payment, and we'll also assume that there is 1 credit card with a balance of around $6,700 and a minimum payment of $134. Again, that just follows national averages. Now, following the debts, we have other life essentials. This includes medicine, childcare, phone, internet, insurances. We have car insurance, employer health insurance plan, renter's insurance. We have monthly clothes, gym memberships, home or personal care products, saving for Christmas and birthdays. We're going to use sinking funds for those too, because they only happen so often, and it's just a way to be cognizant of it and be prepared so that Christmas doesn't surprise. Because who would have thought that it comes on the 25th of December every single year? Wild, isn't it? Anyway, so those essentials are really just anything that's a part of life and expected to happen regularly. Now, the keen-eyed of you may have noticed that we've already surpassed the income with our expenses. I'll get to fixing that soon, but first let's finish listing everything that we're currently paying for. After the essentials, we should have a miscellaneous category in there just as a catch-all, just in case we end up spending on something that doesn't quite fit into any specific category throughout the month. So we'll just say that's $100 for now. Next is your personal spending category. If you're married, have one for yourself and one for your spouse. This is for discretionary spending or fun money, really. Not everyone has it in their budget to be able to include this, but it certainly helps to be able to reward yourself for making progress along the way. So for now, we'll see if we can put that at about $25 each. Now, the final category to add into the budget are going to be the non-essential things. These are things like subscriptions, delivery services, restaurants, activities, meal kits, etc. Now, we'll say subscriptions are about $100 totaled, dining out $250, kids activities $50 a month, vacations we'll say $25 in a sinking fund. So now that everything's listed out, we're going to go ahead and subtract all these categories in order from the initial income number. And the amount that you have left is called margin. That amount should be allocated toward your next goal. the one that we allocated the saving category. If your margin is 0, congrats, you already have a zero-based budget. But if your margin is negative, like we see by following the averages here, we have negative $2,291.50. That means we plan to spend way more than we made, and it's time to make some changes. And that's exactly what I'm covering next. Now, the first step to fine-tuning your budget is tracking. You need to be tracking every single transaction if you want to master your money. Pay attention to every penny as it flows in or out of your account. You can do this manually, or you can use one of the many apps that link directly to your bank account and make it easy to track every single detail. Personally, I use the EveryDollar app by Ramsey Solutions, and at least once a day, I log in and I mark each transaction that I've done. The app takes note of everything that I've spent, where it was spent, what category each one falls under, and how much is remaining in the budget for each category. Now that we have a way to track our expenses, we can see if we missed anything in the budget. Now, it's at this point that we need to evaluate where our money is going and figure out where and what needs to be cut from the budget. Now, as you can see, our margin is currently in the negative like we discussed. So let's go ahead and get that fixed. The first thing to cut are going to be the fun money and the non-essentials. That means no entertainment, no streaming, no vacations, no eating out, and no DoorDash. We're even going to cut the gym because if we're honest, we stopped going 3 weeks into the year and we're changing our eating habits. We're trimming what we can everywhere we can until finally the margin has reached a point that it can contribute significantly toward that next goal that we have. Now, in our example, we're getting aggressive with the cuts just to show how much margin can be created. So non-essentials and fun, gone. That alone gives us $475 back, but we're still negative, so let's keep going. Now, I'm changing phone carriers. Something like Mint, not sponsored, but it's only $15 a month per line. So we're gonna drop whoever we've got with the big name brand and pay only $30 for our phones. Now, clothes, gone. We have plenty. Gym, gone, as I said before. Home care and miscellaneous, we're gonna tighten those up a little bit. And after all of that, we found about $805. Now, if you're radical about it, you could probably cut the food budget in half, but for now, let's just trim off $200 off the top. So now we've found a little over $1,000. So to get really crazy, let's sell one of those cars that we have a $500 payment on. So the car is sold, one of us will drive the other to work, it's fine, we can carpool. So that frees up that $525 that we were talking about. That payment goes away, car insurance goes down, gas and maintenance go down, and after all of that, looks like our margin is still sitting negative about $575. Now, you could still technically cut Christmas and birthdays along with, you can negotiate monthly bills with your carriers. You can tighten up the food cost even more. However, notice that earlier we set aside over $600 toward our current goal. So let's adjust that to $94.25. And now we have a zero-based budget and almost $100 a month to work toward our goals. But let's see how far we can push it. Let's get really radical. So making those adjustments that I just mentioned, we can find an extra $250 per month to put toward those goals. And then you can add that to the cash that we have because we had equity in the car that we just sold. And we're actually making real progress. Let's just assume that the car sold, let's say it had $5,000 in equity in it. Well, there's $5,000 plus $200 a month. Well, we hit our $1,000 savings goal. We could put a big chunk of that money toward baby step 2 and start paying down some of those credit cards and bring down those monthly payments. And we are well on our way. So let's say you did all that, you followed that exercise, and it still wasn't enough to get you some margin in your situation. That means you gotta balance the other side of the equation. Remember, there are two sides of it. There's the income and there's the expenses. Well, we just made the expenses as low as they can possibly get. So we gotta focus on getting that income up. Regardless of your circumstance, the fact of the matter is you need to find a way to earn more money. Whether that's getting a raise or a promotion or a full-time job or a part-time job. Maybe it's a freelance gig or you do gig work through DoorDash or something like that. You need to find other ways of making money because what you're doing now simply isn't enough. Yes, I know it's exhausting and it's a ton of work and it's hard and you have no life, but it's necessary. Right now you are drowning and you need to do whatever you can to stay above the water. The good news is that this is only temporary. And if you really press in and are willing to do whatever it takes to get out of the mess, you're gonna find a way. You may surprise yourself that you may even be able to cut more costs and find more time to maybe go flip items on Craigslist or whatever side job that you have to do in order to get through this season. But if you want somebody to go over the budget and find more ways for you to cut and earn, you can always schedule a consultation where we can look at your situation together and hopefully find a little bit more wiggle room. And of course, once you've been through all of these steps and at the end of each month, it'll be time to revisit the budget. You'll learn where you plan to spend too much or maybe not enough. You can increase some categories while decreasing others as needed. And then I would venture to say, try to challenge yourself. See if you can cut a little more every month. Find new ways to earn a little more every month. Honestly, earn and learn more every month. It'll never be perfect because we're all human, but you can at least do better than the month prior. And soon enough, you'll find that your margin is plentiful and you'll be able to add in those non-essentials and that fun money again. Because this time they'll be added in with intentionality, knowing that they aren't keeping you from achieving your goals. And now hopefully you can see that no matter where you are right now, it is possible to get to where you want to be. And being intentional about your spending is the first step on that path. So starting today, you can decide to make the change, take control of your finances, and create that life that you love. Personally, I hope that you got a lot of value out of this balanced budget blueprint. And if so, it would mean the world to me if you hopped over to Google to leave a review letting me know how it helped. And I'll leave the link for that below. God bless.